let's go to the verses. This is the methodology that we undertook. So, obviously, if we're investigating the word Quran, we pick out all of the instances of the entire Quranic text, all of the references to the word Quran, and we look through them one by one based on context and also based on looking at the manuscript, seeing if there's any peculiarities in each given case. All of this process is still ongoing. We've done the process of exegeting the verses, but even that, relying on Murad, we've got more to do, because even Murad, he's relying on Arabic, but like we say, the textual tradition was deriving its meanings not from the Arabic, so that's the problem. So anyway, that was the methodology. We looked through the Al-Quran instances. We also looked at the instances where it's just Quran, so without the definite article, to see, if there's a distinction here, point of interest. And we went through all of these instances, and we want to share a couple with you now.
Yeah, there are quite a few that they simply just don't make sense. We have the feeling that there are many problems within those verses. Basically, they have to twist everything in the verse in order to make it sound like it's talking about a book. That's the whole point, as we've discussed before. It's not a book until much later, and they have to end up doing things like adding, diacritics, maybe the dhammas, maybe the hamzas, in order for you to read something that sounds like, hey, this Quran thing has to be a book. But there are many verses that don't actually fit that process. So the ones that we found, they seem to be quite clearly not talking about a book. And but there are lots of others that they seem to almost be talking about a book, but we have seen things that suggest that yes, they have actually changed the meaning of words around it. They are shoehorning the meaning of a book, and that would have happened, after the 850. So, for example, we have here this in Surah 3. This is something that we ignored a while back. When we did the session on the Islamic dilemma, we did mention, hey, there are some verses we are going to skip because we need to do basically a bigger payoff or an explanation later. And this was one of them. It is, Surah 3, verse 3. It's often associated with the Islamic dilemma because it says, he continuously descended the writing over thee by the truth, authenticating to what is between his two hands, and descended the Torah and the Injil. So this very obviously would have to be the Quran. So you get to point at that and says, okay, well, you see, you have the Torah and the Injil down there, and if he descended the writing, which authenticates the Torah and the Injil, it has to be a book that comes after the Torah and the Injil. Well, first, it doesn't say Quran. So we haven't actually got any sort of solution or closure with that word. It doesn't say we descended the Quran. It says the writing, Al-Kitab. And as we've mentioned before, we do have a big problem with that word. It doesn't mean what you think it means. And hopefully we will do a show soon enough explaining what the problem is. But note that for as much as we say this has to be talking about the Quran, because there is no other writing that comes after the Torah and the Injil, well, it is talking about Al-Kitab, but they are playing with the dots and dashes quite a bit. So bear that in mind. And
JC, if we're just reading the verse just strictly like chronologically, it also doesn't make sense, right? Because it's saying he's continuously descended the writing over thee by the truth, authenticating that which is between his two hands, and descended the Torah and the Injil. Torah and Injil seem to be chronological, so by implication, this Al-Kitab would be actually prior to the Torah.
Yes, and this is something that this verse has always bothered me, because also it stops in a very weird manner. If you read this from Daif International or one of these guys, it will say, and descended the Torah and the Injil, and then in the next verse, from before, and then it continues. And it's weird. It's like you don't break a sentence in that way, and don't even try to say, oh, it's so that it sounds better because of poetic. It's like, we're not going down that path. It doesn't make any sense. It seems to actually have a problem. So also, Al-Kitab sometimes is used as all of the writings, including the Torah, and it's like, so why would you say the Torah and then the Torah and the Injil? So this verse has a lot of problems, but one of them is Al-Kitab. We have a similar problem to the problem we are discussing today with the Quran. It's quite similar, but we still have to unpick that one. It basically breaks the meaning. Something that I thought I would show here, just because it's fun. So as you can see in verse 4, it says, from before as guidance for humans, and descended the Furqan. Well, they Al-Furqan. I should have removed the de. The thing is, if you go to our wonderful translators like Hilali Khan, he will then render it in the way that he should, because it says Furqan. So he says, and he sent down the criterion. It's like, well done, Hilali Khan, amazing. But then you go to Daif International and he writes, and he revealed the Quran. And he's like, it doesn't say the Quran, it says the Furqan. So can you at least try to get some words right? So I just found it funny. Something as simple as Furqan, that you would have two quite leading translators in this doing something different. One doing it right, the other one doing it wrong. They do actually try to shoehorn Quran, as you can see in this place. In Surah 97, also when it says we sent it down, many of these translators will actually write we sent the Quran down, or they would write we sent it, and then in brackets the Quran. So they keep shoehorning it. Sometimes they don't even translate something as simple as this, as Furqan. But anyway, so we have the problem with Al-Kitab. And just to show why that is important is because we have this other verse that we've discussed many times before, so we are certainly not going to go through the whole thing again. I think we've probably done it in 3 different shows, if not more, where Allah is talking to Jesus saying, oh, remember all of these things that I did for you. But then we get to the middle bit, and he says, and as I taught thee Al-Kitab, the writing, and the wisdom, and the Torah, and the Injil. So now there is a problem, because if you go to the standard translators, you will see that they say, I taught you writing and wisdom, and the Torah and the Injil. But that's not what it says. It doesn't say writing and wisdom. It says the writing. So you have this all-important word, Al-Kitab, being taught to Jesus, and also the Torah, and also the Injil. So now you have one element that sticks out like a sore thumb. That writing, that Al-Kitab in this context, cannot be the Torah, cannot be the Injil, and certainly cannot be the Quran, because that would be a whole different kind of worms. So we know that Al-Kitab cannot be taken as, okay, so you see, this actually proves the Quran. What we are analyzing today is specifically the word Quran. So in the places where it says Al-Kitab, there is a problem, but I wouldn't like to actually get any comments of someone says, no, look, in here it says that Al-Kitab was, a book. And it's like, yeah, we don't care. We're not looking at the word Al-Kitab today. We're looking at the word Quran. We're just making it clear that sometimes we will see Al-Kitab and our brains will fill in the gaps and says, that is talking about the Quran. That's not the case. And these 2 verses show that very, very clearly. Unless you want to actually say that Jesus was actually taught the Quran. And good luck making that argument. Okay,
Then we're
Crash,
looking at, yes, we're looking now at Surah Yunus. We're now in, so that's Surah 10, Ayah 37. We read, and this Quran was not to be fabricated apart from Allah, but authenticating that which is between his 2 hands, and a distinguishment of the writing, no suspicion in it from the Lord of the worlds. Then we read in the next verse, or they say he fabricated it. Say then, advance by a surah like it, and evoke whoever ye were able to, apart from Allah, if ye were authentic. So, a couple things to note. First of all, the first thing is that we have this word apart in the first verse here. And this Quran was not to be fabricated apart from Allah. That means, what? Presumably it was to be fabricated from Allah. Right? Is that the implication, JC?
Well, when we've discussed this, we know the only thing that we agreed on this is that, how did you put it? It's like, it is not apart from Allah, so it is in part from Allah.
So, right,
But
so this Quran was not to be fabricated apart from Allah, hence it was to be fabricated in part from Allah.
Yeah, but it actually has all of these problems. So when I will just say this, like for the audience, when Kash and I were discussing this, we were almost being pushed to the English interpretation, because when you read apart from Allah, you would interpret that as, well, it means exactly the same as except from Allah. This Quran was not to be fabricated except by Allah. And we start adding words to the translation. And it's like, no, hang on a minute. This is not what Murad actually said. He said apart from Allah. Apart actually means really like separated from. So by the way, we've added actually his logo in there. We're actually using his translation like a lot, of course, as anybody watching this channel will always know. But now we have actually added his little icon there as well, in case anybody doesn't know. But what we can tell by this verse is that whatever this Quran is, it has to be part of Allah, not apart from Allah. And that obviously goes well with everything that you've said before about the horn, the light, and all of these things that we're going to discuss, right? But a book doesn't make sense.
Right, because a horn, right, you could ask the question, is the horn the goat? Well, the horn comes out of the goat, so I guess it is the goat. But is the horn also the horn? Yeah, the horn is the horn, but it's also the goat.
Yeah. So anybody in the chat, let us know. Yes, think about those words. And would you find in any possible way that the Quran and Allah, they are not joined in a very, very special manner? And remember how the traditions developed to say, well, this Quran is now eternal. It's like, well, they knew that Quran was eternal and also that it was uncreated and all of those things. But those are not attributes of a book. Certainly not a book that has, words written, stories written, and what is eternal. It's been there together with Allah for all of eternity, had nothing to read, and then he was reading this Quran again and again. It makes no sense. Now, when we think about this, for example, in the Christian or Judaic manner or any other traditions, it would make sense. You says, well, God the Father is there with God the Son and the Holy Spirit. It's like, fine. So you can say they are eternal, they are God, three hypostases. The Quran seems to be a hypostasis of Allah, no?
It does seem that way, yeah. It seems like at least an emanation thereof, right? Another thing that's worth noting, but we're not going to go into anyway, is that there is something about, you can see in this verse here, that it says that what this QRN, this Quran is that it is authenticating what is between his, which is referring to God, right? Because the proximate noun is Allah. So what is it's authenticating to that which is between Allah's two hands. It's very interesting phraseology. So the question becomes, what is between Allah's two hands? And are his hands right hands? Okay, that doesn't actually matter. That's traditions. So yeah, no suspicion in it from the Lord of the Worlds. There is something to be noting. I was trying to find it actually while we were talking, and this is maybe a criticism. Well, I should put things down way quicker. The word for fabricated here in the Syriac, I can't find it in front of me right now, but I do know the word fabricated here means to bring forth, not to fabricate. You might say like, wait, why are we reading a religious text that's talking about God fabricating something? It doesn't make any sense, right? So silly or Syriac? Silly, fabricated, or Syriac? It's something about like to bring forth from, or like, to not quite beget, but it's like to come out of, the way that a horn would come out of a goat's head. So hence we would read, and this Quran was not to be brought forth apart from Allah. So hence the author is saying that this Quran is brought forth from God to authenticate that which is between God's two hands and a distinguishment of the writing. One thing to note here, maybe for those who are a little bit more esoterically minded, the idea of hands and related to God goes back a long, long time, right? And the hand of God, or at least the right hand of God, back to origin tradition, right? Origin identifies the right hand to be Christ, the Word, and then later in tradition, then the left hand, by implication, is associated with the Holy Spirit. So what is between the Holy Spirit and the Word? Well, in the Quran, we read that Jesus is his Word, his Rasulullah, his messenger of God, and also a spirit from him. So 1, 2, what's between his hands? I guess that would be the flesh, or the Rasulullah, or something, right? So I don't have the answer quite yet for this question of the anthropomorphization and the question of what is the left hand, what is the right hand, do they mean anything? What is between the two hands? But those are some things for you all to chew on and think about. So if we then read it as, for now, as so brought forth, right? The next verse says, or they say he brought forth it, right? He brought it forth. Then say, advance by a miracle like it, or surah, right? A sign or miracle, right? Something miraculous, something amazing. So advance by a surah like it, and evoke whoever ye were able to, apart from Allah, if ye were authentic. And by the way, the way I read this verse is this is actually a very no-no. This is a very no-no author. He's a very heretic, anathema. What he's doing here is he's saying that this emanation, this QRN, this power that was able to perform all the miracles like raising the dead, like giving sight to the blind, like giving life to a bird, right? That all of these powers that they were from God. This magical power came from the Quran, the QRN that emanated from God. And the point here, the implication is that they say that He brought it forth, as in they say that Jesus did the miracles on His own accord, like that Jesus performed miracles. And the Quran disagrees. The Quran says that Jesus only performed the miracles by the ear, or they say by the permission in the standard Islamic narrative. That is the word adn. And they say adn means permission. But adn literally means ear. Murad translates it as orality. So the Quranic authors, at least this author, we don't know how many, their traditions are mixed together in this book, but this author does not think that Jesus performed miracles. He insists that Jesus was only able to perform miracles by the means of God, by being receptive to Him, by being, having His ear, right? Like you would say to, that guy has the ear of the king, right? And he has the ear of God, right? He has God hears him, God knows him, and so forth, right? New Testament language. So that's how I read these verses. JC, what do you think?
Well, the second one, I still have my reservations. I think we need to dig into the Syriac more and see more words. But still, with the previous one, I think it's worth noting that the Quran, or rather, basically this book that we have, let's call it Furqan maybe, this book keeps talking about the Quran, but it seems to indicate two very different things. Sometimes it means this Quran, the physical thing that you have in your hands, was not to be fabricated apart from Allah. And it's like, but if you have a book, it is fabricated outside of Allah. Okay, it's actually made of paper, and somebody actually you actually bought it in the shop, and there are lots of them. But sometimes it seems to imply for the people listening, like this Quran that you have in your hands right now and is physical, well, it has to come from Allah. And it's like, no, I know where I bought it, and it wasn't from Allah. So that just doesn't make sense. Sometimes Quran, they have played with these words to make it sound like it's talking about this thing that they are reciting or that they have in writing, which they cause problems. And other times it seems to be talking about this other thing in heaven, like detached from everything else, that actually descends from the heaven. So this Quran thing is something that is in the heavens, that descends from the heavens, and then sometimes it is the physical thing that they have with them. And that, of course, makes no sense. If we want to say what they mean is that the Quran is just absolutely perfect, well, we could talk about Uthman for about 20 days. So no, the book has actually changed a lot. We have just shown even some very small extracts from manuscripts. So the whole thing was, of course, not protected or kept in its pristine form, as Muslims have been misled to believe. So all of those things are important. And remembering that then Quran as book doesn't really appear until much later, and then we read this, knowing what you have explained before about the QRN root and all of these things, it looks like Quran has to be something divine. It's not a book because it doesn't have that name until much later. It has to be something that descends from the heaven. It's also something that was not apart from God, from Allah. It is something that descends from the heavens, as we are going to see in other verses. So people need to really get a very clear idea that, okay, so Quran, they played with it. This is talking about something to do with God. It really seems to imply quite a bit that it is the Holy Spirit, or at the very least, some form of emanation of Allah or light from Allah. So as we go through, we will explain how some different interpretations would be.